You're listening to the Magnetic Boss Podcast, a place for spiritual entrepreneurs and visionary women. I'm Calandra, intuitive brand designer and founder of the Magnetic Boss Studio, where we cultivate magnetic brands, websites, and a social media presence for our clients. On this podcast, you'll learn how to begin cultivating your magnetic brand so you can attract dream clients with ease. Each month, we'll bring you real, raw conversations and industry guest experts to help you create your most magnetic self. Thank you for listening today. Now let's get this party started. Today, I am joined by Nikki Starcat Shields. Nikki is an author, a book midwife, aka writing coach, and the leader of transformational writing retreats. She currently has 5 nonfiction books published with others in the works, including a contemporary fantasy series. She works with entrepreneurs, creatives, healers, and others who have a book idea, but no idea how to write it. Welcome, Nikki. I'm so happy to have you here today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, will you tell everybody a little bit about your background and how you got started as a book midwife?
Sure. It was kind of a big circle or spiral, really, because I wanted to be a writer when I was a little kid. And over the course of schooling, public school and college, I was kind of discouraged from that because, everybody's like, well, you can't make a living doing that. What are you really going to do? So I went into journalism, discovered that deadlines, which are a big part of journalism, are just really not great for my immune system and my body. So I ended up in public radio kind of in the background. I did some on-air stuff, but mostly in administration, and it was great. I loved public radio. I do still love it, but it wasn't my calling, and I kept getting these nudges to write. And so gradually over time, I returned to writing. And, some people are now, things have changed a lot. Some people are now making a living at full-time writing. But then there are those of us who have kind of created a hybrid. So I write and I also help other people write. And so that makes a wonderful second career. And I'm super, super excited about helping people tell their stories.
Yeah, I love that. I've mentioned that you call yourself a book midwife. Will you tell people kind of what that means, especially for someone who maybe doesn't consider themselves an author yet?
Yeah, that's a lot of the people I work with have had a wonderful book idea, or oftentimes they get people in their life who hear their story or what they do, and they're like, oh my God, that's so cool. You should write a book. But they don't know how to do it yet. So those are the people that I help. And the book midwife idea, like the name, came from a conversation and some work I did with a mutual friend of ours, Jennifer Moore, who I helped her get her book into the world, her Empathic Mastery book, which is awesome if you haven't read it yet. Yeah, so good. And so she kind of helped me because it really is, it's like a birthing process. And most of the time it takes, 9 months or maybe more. Sometimes it takes more time to write your book in a sustainable way that fits within your lifestyle. A lot of the people that come and want to write a book also have full busy lives. They're entrepreneurs, or they have a day job that takes a lot of time. They're parents, they're, friends, they have also fur babies, just lots of things going on. And I help them learn to write as part of that life rather than as like a separate thing that they have to add in, just to integrate it more. Because when you write or do anything creative, really, it expands into other areas of your life in cool ways. So we created it. Jen Moore kind of helped me birth this business, really, as a book midwife. And my signature program is 9 months long because of the birthing process. And we bring book babies into the world, which is so exciting.
I love that. And I love that it makes the process of writing seem a bit more approachable. I think that a lot of people, when they have the idea of wanting to write a book or wanting to share their story, it seems insurmountable or like something that they have to dedicate their whole life to.
Right.
And I'm pregnant with a human baby right now and working with a midwife, and having somebody there to guide that process and really hold space for that process definitely opens up so much more freedom and empowerment with that. And I think that that's really special for people that are maybe considering themselves creatives, but they don't know what steps they should be taking.
Yeah, if there's a myth about book writing that it's just something you do all by yourself, just in your office. And there will be some of that, but I've discovered through through creating this business that many of us who are creatives and even introverts thrive within group settings. And so these are like group settings, not like a cocktail party where you're talking about sort of boring, banal stuff, but like group settings where we can focus on our creativity and our ideas and our inspiration and all of that. It really feeds the creative soul to be with others who are doing this. So that's why I like group programs the best.
Yeah, I love that. Can you talk a little bit about the connection between creativity and spirituality? We have a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs listening to this episode. How can those two things kind of work together when it comes to writing a book?
I feel like they're very entwined. They're certainly very entwined for me. And if you think about how when you use your spiritual connection to delve into like even something as simple as what should I focus on next in my business or that sort of thing, you get a lot of information that's often hidden from your conscious mind. And so it's the same with creativity. Once you tap into that and say what's here, what's behind my day-to-day thoughts, what comes forth, it really can surprise you in a beautiful way. There's so much there. And I think that's because you're connecting into the part of you that's not just your physical self. It's like whatever's beyond. And there's a lot of different beliefs about, what's beyond. We won't know, I guess, until we get there. But, you know, just tapping into something bigger than one's physical self seems to bring lots of energy, creativity, inspiration. So many people I work with, and I do infuse the woo-woo. I do guided meditations for my clients all the time. We infuse a lot of that so that they can access that wisdom. And they discover that it ripples into other areas of their life too, which I love. So, and it's fun.
Yeah, I think that it makes that process a little bit less cut and dry, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
When I think of, writing a book, I think of sitting behind your computer and staring at a blank page. But when you think about it from a perspective of spirituality and creativity and tapping into your unique self and the messages that are there for you, um,
Mm.
there's just so much more space for things to flow a little bit easier and in a more fun way.
Yeah, it gets you into that, the concept of the zone. So there's something that you're doing. It's for some people it's like physical activity like running or yoga, and some it's, creating crafts or something that you do that you just love so much, you're so immersed in it that time seems to fly by and you're like, "Oh wow, 2 hours later. Oh, here I am." Still doing my art.
Hmm.
That you can get into that zone with writing even if you've never done it before. And when you're in that zone, that's when the ideas are really just flowing forth from your inner wisdom.
Yeah, I love that. Do you have some practices you can share for people to help them get into the zone or maybe just try uncovering what that might look like for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Often it is really easy to get into creative mode after you've done some kind of connecting thing, whatever that is for you. Some people love meditation or yoga or Pilates or even just going out into nature. Like that's a great way to get connected. Go for a nature walk
Hmm.
and then sit down and see what comes through with your writing or with any creative act, really. I also have um, a group setting called the Parallel Playdates where I welcome in not just writers, but anyone who's working on creativity. We do that. That's another thing you can do is a guided meditation. We do a guided meditation in that group and then get into that zone and then see what comes forth. And sometimes people will bring something that they're working on, like I want to work on a chapter for my book today, and they'll do the guided meditation and they'll be inspired to like declutter their office or to do some art, or it might be something else entirely. So just getting into that spiritual connected state however works best for you. Another thing that I really always suggest to people to avoid that moment of sitting and staring at a blank page is to brainstorm. So get into that zone and then brainstorm. If I was going to write a book, what would be in it? Like, what do I want to talk about? What do I like to get on a soapbox about? What cool, fun, weird things have happened to me? What neat things have happened to my client? Just brainstorm up ideas, make a mind map or just a list in a Google Doc. And that way, when you sit down to write, you can pick one and start there, and it gives you a little window into where you can go. And people always are amazed at this, but you don't have to write your book in order, like in the order it's going to be in eventually. You can just pick something you love to write about and start there.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful for maybe somebody who hasn't written in that sense before, because when I
Mm.
think of writing a book, I think of, okay, chapter one.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
telling some specific storyline. But like you mentioned before, your journey into being a book midwife was kind of like a spiral. And so why wouldn't our book, especially if it's something personal and, you know, writing about your story, why
hmm
wouldn't that be nonlinear as well, at least in the process of writing it?
yeah. And go where the joy is. That's what, and that's what I tell people. Go where it's real. Oh, I really want to write this part about this story that happened, but that's probably going to be at the end of the book. Well, write it. You're going to edit later, so you can put it
Right.
together like a puzzle.
Yeah, editing is a good thing to remember. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be perfect in that first draft.
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, so editing it uses a different part of the brain entirely than writing. So writing is like your creative, flowing, right brain sort of artsy self, and then editing is that where you want that logical, analytical, grammatic, focused self to come in. And if you try to do them both at once, it just really, really slows down your process. So I like to tell people to embrace the messy draft. Just write. Don't worry about the spelling or anything. Just write.
Yeah, I think that that's really helpful for people to hear, especially if they are have some preconceived notions or have heard some of these myths about writing a book. What would you say is the biggest myth about writing a book that you hear people come up against?
I think it's well, we talked a little bit about how like doing it alone, but I think equally big is how much time it will take. So I have a client who has she now has 5 daughters, but at the time she wrote her book, she had 4 daughters. She was homeschooling, running a business, running a household, and she at that time wrote in 20-minute increments in the morning before the kids got up to start their homeschooling day. And so she wrote like 3 or 4 times a week for 20 minutes at a time. And within a year, she had finished her draft. And so if she can do
Wow.
I tell people, if she can do it, you can do it too.
Yeah, I think it really is just a matter of setting that intention and having the accountability and support in that process, like we've said before, where you don't have to write the book alone. You don't have to go through that process alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to take hours a day.
Right, right. And in fact, it seems like it would be more beneficial for you to do it in smaller chunks so that you have that creative flow and you're in the zone versus kind of like forcing yourself to sit down and write for 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing is I help people sort of create a writing habit. And sometimes when you come to the computer or notebook or whatever, you're not going to feel like writing that particular thing. So I encourage them to still keep the writing habit going, but you can journal. Some people like to have 2 different projects to work on. Some who are entrepreneurs will take that time to write some copy or a newsletter or whatever. It's like as long as you're nurturing that habit, let it go where it wants to go on any given day. Your inner wisdom knows knows what to do.
Yeah, I actually wanted to mention content writing because this is something that you and I work on together with your social media. And I always say to people, having an author is probably the easiest social media client because you have so much writing already prepared. It's just such a blessing for me. But when it comes to entrepreneurship and some of these writing practices, how would you say that these things can overlap when it comes to writing newsletter content, social media content, things like that?
Well, it's a myth. I think a lot of people think that they have to have a book that's completely fresh and new. But actually, the way social media works, I mean, you even know more about this than I do, but not everybody's going to see everything. And not everybody will read everything in detail. So, combining your book writing and your social media and other, the newsletter and other presence is great. I'm actually right now putting together a book based on the journey I take people through. And I'm using a lot of that content that I've written, for my business in the book and then kind of expanding on some of it because you have obviously more room in a book. But it's okay if you're writing a book to share excerpts from it on your social media. It doesn't ruin anything. People are still going to want to read the whole thing. I think we have this misconception that, well, they've seen that already. But even if they have, it's going to be some among the millions of other things we read every, week and year. So it's
Yeah.
fine to do that.
Yeah, I think that's so important to mention because we do kind of get wrapped up in the social media hustle of having to produce more, but it is really beneficial both for your audience to be able to consume that content more than once and in multiple ways, but it also helps with your brand recognition, where people are going to be hearing the same types of messages from you, and the more consistent that gets, the more repetition they see, the more brand awareness you're raising.
It's also really good to talk about the fact that you're writing a book for various reasons. One, it will get your audience kind of prepped and excited for it. Two, it provides you with accountability, because somebody, chances are, maybe a friend, is going to say, "Oh, how's that book going?" and it'll keep you on, on track. So, if you're building what you most publishers, whether you go with self-publishing or a traditional publisher, the vast majority of them want you to have an author platform, in other words, an audience. And so if you're an entrepreneur, you already have that, right? You have your newsletter list, you have your social media followers. And if you're building that audience to also be your author platform, saying, "Ooh, this is something I love to share with people. And also I'm writing a book about it," just mention it from time to time. It really helps lead the way for your book when it comes out into the world.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. And it also seems like it would help you with getting feedback from your audience of what they're really tuned into and what they find interesting, which in turn can then help you write your book and really make that something where the material is something that many of your audience members would like to dive into and read the full book.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you think about the people that you follow on social media, you probably have, or that in life, you probably know some of their stories, right? My biz coach, Britt Volnick, who I know you also work with closely, has these certain stories that, some of her clients have heard 10 or 20 times, but it's such a good story that you're just like, "Oh yeah, tell it again. This is so good." And then you want to get her book when she, puts it out there. So
yeah, it reminds me of your favorite Netflix series that you've watched 6 or 7 times and the plot of the story, but you still want to watch it because you love the character.
Yeah, totally.
Amazing. Well, will you tell us a little bit, you mentioned the parallel playdates. Will you tell us a little bit more about some of the offerings that you have and how people can get connected with you and work with you in writing their book?
Yeah, so the best way to find me is on my website, nikkistarcatshields.com. And I kind of follow the same, like on Instagram, I'm at Nikki Starcat Shields. So it's under my name. The playdates are kind of a great way to get an idea of the community. I call my community the community of thriving artists, because we're not starving artists, we're thriving artists. So flip that around. And to get a taste of that community, come on into the play dates. I'll, send me a message and I'll gift you your first seat at one just to come and check it out. I'm happy to do that. And those are 2-hour containers on Zoom where we gather and I lead a guided meditation and a writing prompt. And then we kind of just mute our video and go off and do our thing that we brought to work on or to play with. And then at the end, we come back and say how it went. It's kind of accountability and group spirit. And so many cool things happen between the people who attend, they get inspired by each other, or they both saw the same animal in the meditation, or, things like that. Such fun stuff. I also, if you're wanting to write a book and you don't know how to get started, also on my website, under the join page, you'll see I have a PDF that's called Write the Damn Book, Your Guide to Getting Started. So that's there for you to check out if it's something you'd like to start exploring.
Amazing. I'll make sure I put all of those links in the show notes. I highly recommend you guys go follow Nikki on social media. She has a great presence over there, tons of amazing tips, and her community is really special. So thank you, Nikki, for coming on today and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much. I love working with Calandra. You're awesome. You and your team are just so great in helping me, expand my author platform and my business, and I just love it.
Awesome. Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe wherever you are listening so you don't miss a thing. Your iTunes reviews help the show impact more magnetic bosses just like you. If you leave a review or listen to this episode, share the episode on Instagram and tag @calandra.martin on Instagram so I can thank you personally. If you're craving community and connection with like-minded entrepreneurs, join us inside the Magnetic Boss Collective on Facebook, where you can build relationships and share your business too. Until next time, Magnetic Boss.